Hey, Pat Welsh here. Welcome to the Warrior Server Leader podcast. And of course, it's Tuesday. And if you followed me on LinkedIn in the past, I always had a little 2 or 3 minute video on LinkedIn. It was called Taco Tuesday. Take action, crush obstacles. That's what TACO stands for. Take action, crush obstacles. So I had a dream a number of years ago, a vision, a goal, a mission to start a podcast and take it from 2 or 3 minute little videos on LinkedIn and way back when I had a Facebook page. And here we are. We're launching the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. We're going to have a lot of delving deep into the Warrior Servant Leader mindset, what that means, how you apply it in your life, and occasionally we'll have some guests on and take this journey together. Really, so buckle up. You're in for a half hour, 45 minutes of I think some very timely discussions, insights, lessons learned, failures. I've learned a lot of lessons from a lot of failures. And we're going to start with what exactly is it mean to be a warrior, servant, and leader. But before we jump into that, if you're new to the warrior, servant, leader community, let me tell you just a little bit about my background. First of all, I'm not terribly politically correct. I am 100% Irish. I was born in Dublin, Ireland. When I was 3 days old, my birth mother at the time was a 40-year-old widow and could not keep me. And so she dropped me off at an orphanage on the far south side of Dublin, Ireland. And I lived there for about 15, 16 months and was adopted to the United States by a Irish-American family with also French-German background. And I grew up in Missouri for a number of years and then in Ohio for a number of years. And now I retired and live in Colorado. I did everything completely butt backwards. When it comes to the first responder community, I started out as a lawyer, a prosecutor, 1982 to 1986. And I left the DA's office in 1986 and joined the Dayton, Ohio Police Department, where I spent the next 26 years in about a 500-man department and worked everything from patrol operation. I was a midnight rat for 13 of my 26 years as an officer, as a sergeant, as a watch commander, and spent over half my career in operations division in some capacity or another. I also did time in as a detective in narcotics for a year, and then actually came back to narcotics as the commander years later, and was commander there for about 3 years, and then did a couple more years in investigations as a commander, and then back into patrol, and ended up as retiring as the superintendent of West Patrol Operations. And that was in 2012. And since 2012, over the last 12, 13 years, I've taken some time to write a couple books on the warrior servant leader mindset, my experiences both in law enforcement and in my faith journey, and what that looks like. And I'm on the speaker circuit and training circuit, and teach for the Southern Police Institute out of the University of Louisville, and travel around the country training officers, both military and civilian law enforcement, on administrative law, federal law, constitutional law, and leadership. So in a nutshell, you just got my 67-year plus life story. So let's jump into this warrior, servant, leader mindset. And what does that mean? Well, I'm a big advocate on you have to define your terms so everybody can be on the same page and understand what what you're saying, and they may have a different perspective, a different definition, and it starts conversations. So I'm going to share with you what my definitions are of being a warrior, a servant, and a leader, and what that kind of looks like. A lot of people cringe when they hear um, having a warrior mindset and being in law enforcement, being a first responder. And most often it's because folks see warriors uh, as, quite frankly, killers. That you send your warriors to battle, and it's a battle to the death. The movie 300 and all throughout history, the term warrior has been associated almost solely with the act of war. And in the act of war, there is death and destruction. That's not my definition of a warrior. My definition of a warrior is this: you stand up, you show up, and you defend what you believe. That's a warrior mindset, that up here, you are willing to stand up, show up, and defend what you believe. And it can be in your work life, it could be in your family life, it could be in your faith life, it could be in your community that you live in life. But you have a moral compass, if you will, of what you believe. And you're willing to stand up, show up, and defend those beliefs. And I don't mean punching people out. I mean being able to respectfully, intelligently, articulately, see, that's a hard word to say, articulately, and defend what you believe. The next hat you're wearing, besides having that warrior mindset, is having a servant mindset. And that, to me, and historically over the last uh, couple centuries at least, a servant kind of has a demeaning connotation to it, or even a definition that you have a master. You always hear it: master servant, master servant. And that's not how I view being a servant. Being a servant is having that mindset and the actions of putting the wants and needs of others before your own. You do it as parents. You put the wants and needs of your infant child and all as your kids grow up, you are putting their wants and needs very, very often way before your own wants and needs. And as much as you wanted to buy that Corvette, you ended up having to buy a minivan because the wants and needs of your family required a minivan and not a sports car. Probably in my lifetime, the greatest servant-minded individual, in fact, the greatest probably warrior servant leader in my lifetime, I would look at Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now Saint Teresa of Calcutta in the Catholic Church. And if you read her story and in her life, that she was 100% of the time putting the wants and needs of others before her own. She did not have to do what she did. She was not born into poverty-stricken environment. She just had the heart and the mindset of a warrior, servant, and leader, which kind of brings me to, well, then what is a leader? And I'm a big advocate of studying leadership in many areas, not just in law enforcement. And probably one of the best definitions that I've come to um, be my guiding definition, if you will, of leadership is a leader is a person of influence and impact in the lives of those that they meet. And it could be total stranger. You could have one encounter with a person and never see or hear from them again, and have been a leader in their life because you were a person of influence or impact in their life. And there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. Bottom line is there's still a leader. Hitler was, by all accounts, a great leader for all the wrong reasons. He had incredible impact and influence on the world stage, but he had no moral compass. He was a bad leader, but a leader nonetheless. So that's kind of how we're going to, once a week, at least to start, on Tuesdays, is what challenges are you facing? What challenges are we facing as a community of law enforcement, as American citizens? Or, if you happen to not be in the United States, what challenges are you facing in your life that the same principles, the same truths about warrior servant leadership apply no matter where you're at in the world and no matter what walk in life that you have? I just happen to have the niche of 40 plus years of being in the criminal justice, first responder, law enforcement arena, and that's what I know. So that's where I'm starting and where I want to share with you the lessons I've learned and the things that, if looking back on it, the failures where I could have done much, much better, and failed, and what lessons did I learn from that? Eventually, one of the episodes, I'll tell you the leadership lesson I learned from shooting a chair in my office, accidentally, of course. So we called it an accidental discharge. I didn't accidentally pull the trigger, but I'll tell you that story, and the leadership lesson I learned from shooting a chair. And it's funny a little bit, not at the time it wasn't, but the leadership lessons I learned and the foundation that I had established with the folks I was working with and responsible for was we all had a good laugh. So we'll share that episode on another day. I do want to take a minute to give a shout out to some folks that have really helped me, gave me a platform many, many years ago to write articles about the warrior servant leader mindset in the law enforcement community, and who have been instrumental and really very supportive in helping me launch and make this podcast possible. So a huge shout out to Kyle Reyes. He now owns Law Enforcement Today, Police Tribune, and Blue Lives Matter. And he has just been a great supporter of me. We've had great conversations. And back in the day when I was writing articles for Law Enforcement Today, Kyle was the national spokesperson for LET, and now owns it. So thanks to Kyle and his folks at LET, Police Tribune, and Blue Lives Matter. So what should you expect over the coming episodes? And it's going to be kind of diverse. I some of it's going to be driven by current topics. What has happened recently in the law enforcement community. or in our communities that have been impacted by law enforcement actions or inactions. Uh, and how can we address this us versus them environment that has been created over decades and decades of law enforcement and community interaction? One of the things I want to really make a point of is we really do need to care about who we are and how we perform our jobs in the law enforcement arena. I'm not big on acronyms. You cops out there, you know what FUBAR and some other acronyms stand for. But the word care for me is an acronym. And this is what it stands for. And this is part of having that warrior servant leader mindset is you have to care. You have to commit all resources and energy in order to be a warrior servant and leader. CARE, commit all resources and energy. And when I was a commander over investigations and homicide work for me, that was something that a lot of homicide detectives struggle with in their professional life, and it touches into their personal life, is when you're dealing with homicides, particularly in a urban law enforcement setting, maybe not so much out in the rural setting. In Dayton, Ohio, we were averaging 50, 60 homicides a year. I had 5 detectives, 1 sergeant, and a couple of backup detectives that did the felonious assault. You start responding to 50 or 60 homicides a year, that takes a huge toll on you psychologically, socially, spiritually, physically, and it wears you down to where many detectives develop the mindset of, hey, it's just dopers killing dopers, or it's just gangbangers killing gangbangers, and it's just another day on the job. And I get that. I've been on hundreds of homicides from the time I was a rookie cop. My first homicide was a murder-suicide, and I'd only been on the job, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. And when I was a watch commander, I had 4 separate homicides just in one 12-hour shift, and they weren't even related to one another. And I get the self-defense mechanism that we will put up to try and protect ourselves psychologically and otherwise. And I still firmly believe you have to commit all resources and energy to doing your job, because particularly in homicides, you're the only person in the world as that homicide lead detective that gets to tell the story on behalf of the person that died. And even if they are a gangbanger or a doper or, a repeat felon, they still have a family. They still had loved ones. They still have people that are hurting and missing their loved one and don't understand why this had to happen to them. And if we have this cold heart and mindset of, it's just dopers killing dopers, then we're in the wrong profession. And we're going to talk about that. There's going to be episodes on that. There's some folks I'm looking forward to having on that have seen the worst of the worst in law enforcement. Have seen the worst that mankind can do to another person, and we're going to have those conversations. So that's one of the acronyms other than TACO. Take action, crush obstacles. I'm not a big guy on what the on having acronyms, but what can you look forward to in the coming weeks? That on Tuesday, that you know that there's going to be an episode coming out. What kind of things are we going to be looking at? I touched on it briefly. We're going to be looking at current topics, practical tips and challenges to grow your warrior servant leader mindset. Some guests sharing their journey. Eventually, I hope we get to the point where we can do some live broadcast and have more forum type discussions. And basically, all of this is the big vision is to develop a community of warrior servants and leaders who can support one another and share and celebrate with one another when you have successes. Some things I want to kind of close with. I'm old enough to remember who Paul Harvey was. And he had his own column and his own radio show. Every year during Police Memorial Week, a lot of radio stations will play Paul Harvey's interpretation of what is a cop, what is a police officer. But he was famous byline, if you would, is now you know the rest of the story. And one of the things that cops have, firefighters have, paramedics have, is they don't get very many Paul Harvey moments in their careers. They don't know the rest of the story of how they influenced or impacted somebody's life on a call for service. I've had very few Paul Harvey stories, but there is one that just struck me, and I talk about it in my 2 books. I talk about it in a chapter in James Patterson's Walk the Blue Line. They were kind enough to reach out to me and ask if I would share some of my stories that ended up being in that book. And this is what I want this podcast to be for you and for others, is knowing that even if you don't get the Paul Harvey rest of the story, know that you are touching the lives of people. So here, real quick, I become a cop till I was 28, so I was in my early 30s, and I catch a call on the midnight shift on a returned runaway 12-year-old, a returned 12-year-old missing child. Report had been taken earlier in the day where the kid did not come home after school. So his parents called and made a missing report. And it was sometime after midnight, later in that day, that I get the call that the kid's returned home. And I have to go take a report on his return and cancel the broadcast. So I get there. I'm a 150-pound white guy in his early 30s. This was a 95% African-American residential area, a lot of poverty, a lot of crime, a lot of drugs. And I pull up to the house. The first thing that strikes me is how well kept the yard was, because it was almost like an oasis in the middle of a desert. And I knock on the door, and mom and dad answer. And again, this was kind of unusual for this area, as it was mostly single parent households, mostly the mothers raising their kids, no father in the house. They invited me in. The house was impeccable. and just very clean, very furnished, nicely. Just again, an oasis compared to most of the other homes I would go into during my shift. So all I had to do was confirm that the young man had returned and that he was safe, wasn't hurt, and I did that. And I tell the parents, if this happens again, just give us a call and we'll send out an officer. Mom looks at me and goes, "Will you talk to our son? We are at our wits' end. We both work. We're not on welfare. He's in private school. We're paying the tuition, which is why we can't afford to move out of this neighborhood. And we just don't know what to do anymore. Would you be willing to talk to him?" So I'm thinking, what's a 30-something-year-old white guy going to tell a 12-year-old black male growing up and living in this environment? So I looked at Mom. I said, "Sure, I'll talk to him, but can I just talk to him by myself?" And they said, "Yeah." So they took me into this little sitting room, like a little parlor room. And I sat down. And a few minutes later, this young kid comes in, never makes eye contact with me. He has his head down. He sits down, and I talk to him like a parent. We have 5 kids. So I didn't talk to him like a cop. I didn't tell him to get his head out of his ass. I tried to talk to him like a parent and encourage him to not run with this crowd of kids in the neighborhood that he was running with. He wasn't going to school with them, but he was living in that neighborhood, and he was destined for prison if he kept going. And I left. I probably maybe 5 minutes spent with this young guy. 18 years later, I'm in line at Kroger's in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm off duty. And I carried a gun everywhere I went off duty because I never knew who I was going to run into. We had to live in the city because we worked for the city. And Dayton at that time was the 7th most violent city in the United States per capita. Compton, California was number 9. And so I had my gun on as I'm in an ankle holster, and girls checking my groceries out. I just minding my own business. I just want to get my groceries and leave. So a little old lady standing in line behind me, and then some other people behind her. And this voice behind her goes, "Hey, Welsh, is that you?" And I'm like, okay, it's got to be a cop or a bad guy because nobody calls you by your last name except another cop or a bad guy. So I did a General Mattis, be professional, be polite, but have a plan. So I turn and I look, and this guy's about 6'3", 6'4", maybe, black male, looked to be early 30s. And I'm thinking, not a cop. And I go from yellow to red. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do if this guy gets froggy with this little old lady between us? If he follows me out in the parking lot, I don't have a radio, I don't have a cell phone. How am I going to handle this situation? And I look at the guy and I go, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You don't probably remember me." And I was thinking hard. What did I arrest this guy for? And I go, "No, sir, I don't remember you." He goes, "When I was 12 years old, I didn't come home from school, and you were the officer that came to the house when I did come home. And I just want to tell you, I graduated college, I'm married, I have a couple kids, and I want to say thank you." And that was like, man, that hit me here. I'm like, who's the jackass now? I mean, I just jumped to the conclusion or had that mindset of, this has got to be a bad guy. And I had a Paul Harvey moment. I got to know the rest of the story. So as we go through sharing stories and doing the podcast and having people on and sharing their journey, I always want to end an episode with an encouraging story, a word of encouragement, and that there are good people out there, and that we don't have to always be on hyper alert and think the worst. Because there's one lesson I learned over the last 67 years. Whatever you're looking for, you will always find more of it. And if you're looking for the worst in people, you're going to find it. If you're looking for the best in people, you'll find the best in them. And it may only be like much, but that's what you're looking for. So I want to sign off today. Thank you for being here. I hope you follow us as we drop new episodes. Share our podcast with other folks, and reach out to me. My email address is pjwelshllc@gmail.com. pjwelshllc@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Love to hear your story. Love to be there to support and encourage you, and to also celebrate with you when you have successes. So that's it for today's episode. Love you all. And hey, next Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. See you then.